Hi, and welcome back to Just Ask the Question. I am your host, Brian Karen. With me is a good friend and former congressman from Illinois and part of the Tea Party movement.
Say it with pride, Brian. Part
With
of the Tea
pride.
Party.
Part of the Tea Party. And now a voting Democrat, Joe
Ugh.
Walsh. Joe, how you
Hey,
doing, brother?
good to be with you, my friend, and Merry Christmas to you and
Merry
yours.
Christmas
Great
to
to be
you,
with
too.
you.
It's good to see you all right as you I don't know, I'll catch you up real quick. Pam just went through a health crisis too. We were
Mhm.
talking about, and so we spent 2 weeks in Europe getting the fuck away from everything to celebrate our 42nd wedding anniversary, and now we're back. So I hope you're doing okay.
I'm getting better. I've told people I
Yeah,
had surgery. It's been a tough recovery, but I'm back. But Brian, this year is just ending politically on just the darkest, most depressing shit with what Trump is doing to this country.
yeah, I agree. You're not going to find me disagreeing with you. In fact, I wrote for Salon this week that the speech that we saw from the president of
Oh,
the United States on Wednesday was his Joe Biden moment. I don't even think Republicans liked what they saw. It
no.
was I was stunned. I'll tell you, I for a few moments I simply couldn't form words, and that's not a common occurrence for me, as anybody who knows me will tell you. But there I was shocked into silence. I mean, he stood up on nationally televised primetime address on Wednesday, and for close to 18 minutes, he sounded like he was shot out of a cannon, and it was all anger, and it was yelling at the nation and how great he is, and then at the very end, a Merry Christmas, and then off he went.
Yeah.
Were you surprised?
Well, Brian, you make a really good point because you know how I feel about Trump. But even for Trump, that was really bad.
Yeah.
And I think you know him better than I do, having covered him. He looked pissed. I think he's pissed about where he and his party are politically right now. I think he's pissed. Now, he's single handedly fucked up the economy, but I think he's pissed about where they're at. And he didn't want to have to go out there and say, uh,
Exactly.
eat your broccoli. It's good
Yeah.
for you. But that's kind of what he did.
Yeah. I mean, he sounded like a man who desperately wanted to get through the speech so he could go to the bathroom. I mean, that's just, I don't even know how to put it other than that. But I and then in the end, he sounded to me kind of like a South Carolina auctioneer at a county fair. I mean, he's
Yeah.
just rattling this shit off, and it was his greatest hits, which was all it was all grievances. Um,
And when you think about it, Bry, he spent 18 minutes saying everything is great and it's all Biden's fault.
yes,
And
yeah,
that's hard to thread that needle. And Bry, just indulge me for a second.
sure,
Even a few days before the speech, his response to the brutal slaying of Rob and Michelle Reiner,
oh
Brian, that response of his, like that cracked through to regular people. I hear from Trump supporters every day, even they were startled and put off by that.
yeah. Well, who wouldn't be? I mean, but in point of fact of all of that, I have said for a while, like since the end of his last administration, that I thought he was mentally
Yeah.
losing it and physically losing it. Even if Dr. Ronnie came out and said he'll live to be, 200, nobody believes that crap. But now I think, this is full blown. I mean, like I said, when I got out of the country, people are going, this guy's a shit gibbon. He's nuts. And you come back and he gives this speech. There has been talk in the past about using the 25th Amendment to remove him from office. And then I'd like you to explain. You put out a piece on what was it, Truth Social, about
Yeah.
that. Well, explain what you mean by it.
Simply, like I think he's an evil person, but that's separate.
Yes.
Brian, I think he's a full blown psychopath, which what I mean is I think he's humanly incapable of caring about anyone or anything but himself. And you combine that now with the fact that mentally, I think he's becoming more unstable and mad, as in madness, by
Yes.
the day, that I really believe, and I think the people around him believe, he's a danger to the country.
Yeah. Well,
And what options do we have? I mean, if I believe he's a danger to the country. What can you do? He needs to be removed now. How do you do that? Well, the only little tool we've got is the 25th Amendment, because he ain't going to be impeached and convicted.
Well, that's all right. Yeah, let's start with that. Let's start with all right. If you think he needs to be removed, I think he should have never been brought back into office. But
Agreed.
but that is then, and this is now. So there are three. The poor guy could expire in his. I mean, he could just go face over in his morning cornflakes and babble like a cicada until he's done. He could be impeached and convicted, but with you couldn't even get the Congress to pass Affordable Care Act before they, and enhance, which is always amazing to me because Congress, by and large, a lot of members of Congress get, health care for life at a very reduced rate, free,
Yeah.
and and we can't even get affordable health care. So I don't think that the Congress is going to impeach and convict him. Obviously, they've tried it twice before and it didn't work. So that leaves the involuntary transfer of power under the 25th Amendment. And let's see, Section 4 says if the VP and a majority of the cabinet declare the president unable to serve, the VP becomes acting president. Congress decides the issue if the president contests it, requiring a 2/3 vote in both houses to keep the VP as acting president. This would stir up a shitstorm. But that one sentence lets you know I don't think he'd ever go gentle into that good night. But I do think we've seen the vice president being prepped like he's a relief pitcher in the bullpen, late inning relief pitcher, short term reliever, because he's been out in public more often. How do you think this could actually work? Because there's no way in hell the 25th Amendment would ever be invoked. How do you see it being invoked? How could it happen?
Well, and by the way, Brian, you've spoken on this issue for a while, and I appreciate that. It's the only viable option. Even if the Democrats take back the House and/or the Senate in 26,
Yeah.
I don't think they'll go. I don't think they'll ever go down the impeachment conviction route. So even though it's extremely difficult, the 25th Amendment is the only option, and it's going to take because he does get more dangerous by the day. And I'm not saying this is going to happen, Brian, but it's going to take someone courageous in that cabinet, someone courageous working with him, who's willing to fall on his sword and say this if it really gets to the point where he's making decisions that threaten people's lives and threaten the country.
I think he's already done that, but
which he's already done.
Who do you think it would be if you were out of the members of the cabinet? Who would you think would stand up? You know them. You know most of them.
That's such a great question. There was a time, Brian, I always wanted to believe that Marco Rubio still had some normality to him, some sanity to him. I don't think so. The whole Susie Wiles thing this past week was kind of like a first shot over the bow, and no cabinet member bit at it. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but there is no other option.
It's interesting you bring up Susie Wiles because I thought that article in Vanity Fair, she said, I will push back against the president, but at the end of the day, he makes the decisions and I implement them. So what that tells me is that there's no 25th Amendment option without Susie being involved in it somehow.
I agree with that. Susie Wiles would have to be involved in it somehow. And I think congressional, again, it's at that point, but if it really gets to the point, I think congressional, probably senatorial Republicans will put humongous pressure on the cabinet to do something. I don't think it will come from inside the cabinet. I think it would come from a group of Senate Republicans who would demand.
Now that's interesting. Yeah. You think it would come from without, not from within?
It would have to come from without. They would knock on the cabinet's door and they'd say, we're well past the fucking point. Either you do something or we're going to demand you do something and we're going to go public on a bunch of stuff. I think that's the only way it happens. I don't see anybody, because any member of the cabinet who stood up and said, we got to do this, they're gone the next day.
Yeah, well, anybody who would stand up and say it publicly would probably be gone the next day. But to that point, I've talked to sources who say it's a murmur. That's that, it's like a brief, remember, 25th Amendment runaway. That's, but it's not like it's not on their mind. You know that end of the aisle better than most.
Yeah.
You think it's being discussed in those channels?
I have no doubt. Look, I think I can't stand Marjorie Taylor Greene. Can't trust her as far as I could throw my cup of coffee. But she's right in one thing, and that's still a lot of Republicans privately understand right now that Trump's a danger to the party and a danger to the country.
Took them long enough to get there.
Took them long enough to get there.
Yeah.
But I think the pressure would come from a group in the Senate who just don't give a damn anymore. I
And who would
don't.
that be?
That's a great question. That's a great question. What if he went to war against Venezuela? What if the madman declared war against Venezuela? You'll see Rand Paul. You'll see a number of Senate Republicans stand up against that.
Thomas Massey and
In the
Rand
House.
Paul. Yeah.
Yeah. It would come from that. It's and Brian, because you know the inner workings of that place. In a weird way, he's like almost not even doing his job and falling asleep every day.
Right.
Stephen Miller's like running shit. Russ Vaught, these guys are all out doing their things, and Trump just sits slumped over on at the Oval Office. It's
While Susie Wiles directs traffic.
while Susie Wiles directs traffic.
Yeah, so that's frightening in and of itself. But here we are. They left. I don't know that Congress. I don't know that the House, maybe the Senate, but I certainly don't see the House moving in any type of direction like that because, look, they left without, talking about health care. They're going to come back from the holidays, and one of the very first things they're going to have to pick up again is another government stoppage. They have to take a look at that, before anything else. So I don't know that they'd pick up the 25th Amendment, but go ahead.
No, Brian, I was going to say, I think it's going to revolve around the midterms. Look, things don't look good for Trump and Republicans right now. Look at all Trump has done this year to try to begin to fuck with the midterms. And I think Trump's going to ratchet up what he's going to do. Focus on his use of the military in blue cities and blue states.
Yes.
Keep your eyes focused on this. I think he's going to turn that up 1,000,000 times. He's going to do shit to try to incite chaos and violence, all to desperately try to put off this blue tsunami. I think when he engages in lawless, corrupt shit like that, I think that may be the impetus to have some Republicans say, this guy's gone.
That would be interesting. I agree with you about the ratcheting up going into the election, because he's already doing it. I mean, let's be honest. It's already there. The ICE raids, they continue to claim that there's no citizens of the United States that have been caught in them, and there's hundreds of them that have. I interviewed a couple of them that have.
Mm-hmm.
So we all know that that's coming. But
he started the whole mid-decade redistricting back in April when Trump called Abbott in Texas and said, find me 6 more fucking seats. Redistrict.
Yeah.
That's cheating.
Well, and I think that might backfire on him too, especially in Texas. There are a couple of those districts that they created in Texas. I don't think there's a chance in hell a Republican will win them. So that could come out there kicking in the ass even
then
worse.
Brian, he's so open in his corruption. He gives a pardon to Congressman the Henry Cuellar. He gives a pardon to him, believing that he'll then become a Republican. Cuellar comes out and says, I'm not going to be a Republican. Trump gets all pissed off.
Yeah, and he says he's bombing Venezuelan drug boats when they don't even make fentanyl in Venezuela. There's been no due process. There's been, and then who did he set free that was a drug dealer? Wasn't that a leader of a...
former head of Honduras. Look, Brian, I don't know, but what we do know is we have a 15-year-old who's in charge of the Department of Defense who will do whatever Trump tells them to do. So I just think it's going to be a scary year next year, and that may propel more 25th Amendment talk.
So how do you? All right. So let's play. Let's role play it out. All right. We're after the midterms. I think you're probably something is if. But then again, I preface this by saying I've covered politics for 40 years, and the Democrats are infamous for stealing defeat out of the jaws of victory. They do it time and again. And there's this talk of AOC and Kamala Harris coming back. And man, if you want to guarantee, the Republicans would love if the Democrats ran those two as president and vice president in 2028. So all of that talk, we put that aside. Let's say for a second that the Democrats come to their senses. I'm saying it's possible. So the Democrats come to their senses and realize they have to tack towards the middle in order to assure themselves a victory, because that's really all a lot of these disinterested voters and a lot of the independents want is someone who isn't whacked out woke or whacked out racist. Just, can we just go back to the way things were? We're all progressive. We all love to go forward. So instead of tacking so far left or so far right that you meet on the bottom side of and you're the same thing. So let's say that the Democrats find a way to do that. And after the 2026 election going into 2027, they are in control of the House and maybe even the Senate. But at this point in time, the Republicans, of course, will be desperate. Donald Trump will have gone completely. I mean, he's batshit nuts now. You cannot look at that speech. I maintain that speech this week was his Joe Biden moment, like Joe Biden after the end of the first debate. People went, holy shit, he's really gone. I mean, George Clooney might write a letter to the New York Times next, or in case of Donald Trump, it might be James Woods. But there'll be somebody going, hey, he's batshit nuts. So you go.
Hey, and by the way, on that, Brian, after the speech, I had two Republicans who still talk to me, well-connected Republicans who called me and said, he's gone. He's nuts. I forgot the doctor, the surgeon on CNN, great guy.
Sanjay,
he went on and he said, I have real concerns. That was 18 minutes of like manic whatever.
Yeah.
I'm worried about his state. That's scary.
Well, yes, as a member of the electorate, as a reporter who's covered him, watching that 18-minute, I felt like he had either been amped up on Adderall or he had enough caffeine in him to adequately supply an infantry division. He was gone, baby.
Ryan, you covered him every minute of every hour of every day in the first term. There's a big difference. And again, he's always been a bad guy. There's a big difference between Trump 1 and 2. What is it?
The difference between Trump 1 and Trump 2 is Trump 1, he could speak cogently and you may not agree with him.
Yeah.
But he could speak cogently for an extended length of time. Now, pool reporters, us covering this administration, we have to parse his quotes and pick words out 4 or 5 at a time to hope that we get some meaning from them, because he just rambles. It's just stream of consciousness. It comes out of his mouth, plus the physical deterioration. The thing I pointed out is that speech that he made from the diplomatic reception room in the first administration, he would have gone to, I don't know, Charleston, West Virginia, or Monroeville, Pennsylvania, and stood in front of 5,000 or 6,000 supporters, the cameras away from him. He would have appeared less manic. He would have appeared more presidential, quote, air quotes around that term, but he wouldn't have. But now he's in a closed quarters. He doesn't do well in those events anyway, when they're in and he sits down a lot more than he used to. He stood up for this, but
Brian, he's always sitting down.
Yes, always sitting down. And it looked like they had enhanced his performance. Maybe it was just energy drinks. I won't guess what it was, but for him to stand up for 18 minutes and just berate and yell, that seemed like it was, I was worried about, and he was clutching the lectern. I thought, the poor son of a bitch, I almost felt sorry for him.
No,
That's
don't go there. Don't you go there.
almost. I said almost, almost. If he had
Right.
been,
And there's never been transparency in his physical health.
no,
He came out 2 weeks ago. He said, I had an MRI. For what, he was asked. He
I
didn't
don't
know
know.
for what.
He didn't even know what part of the body. There's that to me, he's lost his ability for cogent thought, and we have failed as reporters to cover it adequately. And I love God, love him. I don't want to see another Jake Tapper tour 2 years from now going, I knew the whole time, and we didn't report on it. We reported on Biden, some of us did, and
Yeah.
questioned it often, and got Biden pissed off at us, as is our job. But I think we've kind of fallen down on this.
So I agree. So I guess to put a bow on this, Brian, look, I think he's incapacitated. I think he's gone. I think he's a madman. I think he's a psychopath. I think he's a danger right now to the country.
I
I
do
think he
too.
should be removed. I I do believe we live in a time where he has so captured my former party. I don't think my former party will ever take advantage of the 25th Amendment. That is the only tool. I don't see them doing it. And then what the fuck?
Until do you see it at so after the elections, if this goes south for the Republicans, that's at the point in time when you think they might.
Well, hey, here's the thing. Like Democrats, my new party, they're such fucking wussies, and they so don't get it.
I
Uh,
don't
right? You and
don't get
I,
me
you and
started.
I know. So,
I
so I'll bet you dollars to donuts they take back the fucking House and the Senate. They wouldn't even move on impeachment. He's done enough right now to be impeached. The way
Yeah.
he's just using the powers of his office to enrich himself and go after the private individuals, he deserves to be impeached. But I think Hakeem Jeffries, the new speaker down the road, will say politically this isn't good for us, and I don't know that they would.
Yeah, I don't think they would either, leaving just the 25th Amendment. So if we play role play for a second, and we're now, January of 2027, and Donald Trump has ripped his clothes off and gone running through the public shouting, I'm a big boy now. And suddenly the Republicans go, okay, now he's got to go. How does that play out? Who approaches the cabinet? Is it the vice president? Is it Susie
No,
Wiles?
the,
Is it,
the
go
vice
ahead.
president would be the beneficiary of, and
Right?
all these discussions would be had in private. So he'd stay out of it. I think if it were to ever happen in your scenario, 3 to 4 Republicans who don't give a fuck about running again will come to the cabinet, key members in the cabinet, and say, this is gone. And we have to do something. And if you don't turn that 25th Amendment light on, we're going to force you to. And the pressure then will become too great from the Senate. I think Senate Republicans.
So here we go. Whenever the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, and so we're talking about the cabinet, transmit to the president pro tem of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, do we think it'll still be Mike Johnson?
No.
Their written declaration that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the vice president shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting president. Thereafter, the president transmits to the president pro tem that no inability exists. He shall resume the powers transmitted within 4 days, blah, blah, blah. This is how the president holds on to it.
But and what's interesting there, Bri, is in your scenario, if the Democrats take the House and the Senate, the only way they would move on this is if they knew they had Republican backing in both chambers.
And that's so. I don't know at the end of the day that the 20 as much as and there are people who are going 25 now, and we're going to vote this week. I don't see it happening.
I agree with you. I don't see it happening. I know there are murmurs about it.
Yes.
It is the only tool because I don't see Democrats using impeachment. It's the only tool, but I agree with you. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, and that's but like you, I also think it's the only tool that would work. that could remove him prior to him either expiring in his Rice Krispies or and I don't think that I think he's in a bad way mentally and physically. So I don't even know if he survives his we've got 1,127 days left to go in his administration. After the first year, I'll wrap it up this way. After the first this is what 300 nearly 300 days we're into it. I don't recognize this country anymore.
You and I are the same fucking generation, my brother, and agreed. And as I like to say often, the very thing our founders feared is in the White House. And we're all to a degree to blame for that. Trump's just the fucking symptom of how broken we are.
Yes, you're right. Absolutely.
So I, laugh at what you saw the other night because that 18 minutes was laughable. But man, those of us like you that love this fucking country, we got to keep our heads down the next 11 months and at least help Democrats win the House so that they can at least begin conducting oversight again. That's all.
Well, and finding some decent goddamn Democratic candidates. I have seen so many people from the Democratic side of the party going, this is the time we've got to get rid of the middle of the road members of the party. We have to, and I'm going, yeah, sure. You want to guarantee that the Republicans continue to win? You do that. I mean, I
agree with you, Brian, but I will say my new party needs a fight. They need a brawl.
Yes. Yeah, they do.
And I don't mind it out in the open, but you're right. They're having a brawl and it's going to get worse.
Yeah, well, they eat their own. They always do. But it is the time of the season of loving.
Merry Christmas, everybody. That was so funny, though, Brian. For 18 minutes, he's fucking yelling at us, and then he says, "And Merry Christmas to everyone."
Yeah. And did you? There was so much Garland. All right, there's so much Garland behind him. I thought it was a product placement for Trump Garland that you could get on the White House website.
For the record, Helene just heard that and she cracked up.
Well, I love Helene. But I'm telling you, I was like, I could not. When I got off of it, John Bennett and I from CQ Roll Call, and we do a weekly thing together. We got together and to take a look at it, and I was like, what the fuck was that? Yeah. And I'm still there. What the fuck was that? And like you, when I saw your post about the 25th Amendment, I said, "Oh God, we got to talk about it," because, like you, I had said that the only real tool that you could use, other than if he expires, is that, because I don't think that even if, like you, I don't think the Democrats have the wherewithal to push an impeachment, and they certainly couldn't get the votes they needed in the Senate right now. So I guess that remains a possibility after the 2026 midterms. Impeachment would remain a possibility, but I like exploring the concept of the 25th because it looks like I've heard murmurs of it from Republicans, and like you, I have heard people say, "All right, so how would we do it?" And what you said about Republican congressmen and senators coming forward is, pressuring them.
They would have to lead it.
Yeah. But I think at the end of the day, particularly after what I read in Vanity Fair, nothing happens without Susie Wiles signing on to it.
Agreed.
If she signs, and so she's the linchpin. I would suppose and submit that if there's anyone talking to anyone seriously right now, it would be Republican senators and congressmen taking her aside and saying,
"Absolutely,
hey,
Brian." Because she's no ideologue. She's the gatekeeper. She has no dog in this fight. And she ain't running for office down the road. So she is the key.
Yeah. And like I said, wink, wink, it's like she's got some good football sense in her. She's a good quarterback who's playing for a lousy coach, but she puts the plays in, and at some point in time, if there's a new play caller, she'd like it.
And knowing who her dad was, man, she knows football. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, Well, that
Thank you, guys. So good to be with you, brother.
Joe, it's always a pleasure, man. Get well, get better. Have a Merry Christmas. My best to you and Helene.
Right back at you. Merry Christmas.
Happy trails. Oh, and this is Just Ask the Question. I want to thank everybody for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.